Steps are pretty simple. Using your push tool, you want to push out your rear takedown pin, remove your bolt carrier group, and your charging handle. Once you're at that step, you can push out your pivot pin, and that separates the upper from the lower receiver. The final step is to remove the buffer and the buffer spring by hitting the detent pin and drawing those out of the extension tube. To take apart the bolt carrier group, you identify the firing pin retaining pin, draw it out of the carrier, and you're able to drop the firing pin out as well. Press the bolt back and give the cam pin a quarter turn so it's parallel with the bolt, and draw it out, and the bolt should remove. The first thing you're going to want to clean is your barrel and your chamber. A couple key points. You want to make sure that every time you draw a bore brush or a patch through the bore, you start from the upper receiver and draw it forward to the muzzle in the same direction that a bullet is traveling. But once your bore is clean, you want to make sure and wipe down the outside of the upper receiver and then do a good cleaning of the inside of the upper receiver. The next group of components you want to clean are the bolt carrier group. The most critical parts to clean thoroughly are the bolt carrier, especially inside where the carbon can build up and inside the gas key. On the bolt around the gas rings and the neck, and then also the face of the bolt to make sure that you've got all the carbon and brass fouling clear. And then on the remaining pieces, simply wipe them down. The last component you're going to focus on is the lower receiver itself. And for this portion, you just want to wipe down the outside of the stock. You're not actually going to take it off. But what you want to focus here on is making sure that the trigger area is clean and free of any debris. The magazine well is clean. And then once you've taken the buffer and the buffer spring out, wipe down those components and the extension tube to make sure that those are clean as well. Once you've got your Bushmaster clean, the next thing you need to do is lubricate it. So here's the key places you want to make sure and get lubrication. Make sure you lubricate the bore and the chamber. Next is the bolt carrier group. You want a generous lubrication here because this is where all the action and movement takes place. And then lastly, in the lower receiver, lightly lubricate everything on the inside and then do a final wipe down of everything on the exterior. Take your bolt carrier and insert your bolt. Take your cam pin, drop it in through your bolt, and give it a quarter turn. Next, insert your firing pin and your firing pin retaining pin. Place the charging handle and the bolt in like so. Take your buffer spring, place it in the extension tube along with the buffer. Reconnect the lower receiver to the upper receiver and close the pivot pin and the rear takedown pin. And that's the reassembly of a Bushmaster rifle. Once you've reassembled your Bushmaster rifle, you're always going to want to perform a safety functions check to make sure that you've reassembled it properly and the safety will engage. In order to do that, with the safety selector on safe, go ahead and pull the trigger. The trigger shouldn't fall. Now place the fire selector on fire, pull the trigger, and the trigger should fall. Holding the trigger to the rear, charge the firearm. Slowly releasing on the trigger, you should hear an audible click. At that point, you can pull the trigger again and the hammer should fall. And finally, charge the weapon one more time, place it on safe, and you know you've reassembled it correctly. These are the highlights for the care and maintenance of your Bushmaster rifle. There's more detailed instructions inside the operating manual that comes with your rifle or can be downloaded online at bushmaster.com.